All right, today I'm going to be recording a problem string called Fraction Model Practice with Ratio Tables. And this is from Unit 2, Module 2, Session 6 in Bridges. Again, we're going to title this Fraction Model Practice with Ratio Table. Okay, my first equation is 1/2 minus 2/5. Okay, now we learned how to use the clock method and the money method. Today I'm just going to review the ratio table method. So we have 1/2 minus 2/5, and I'm going to use a ratio table to figure this out. So I have 1/2 and I have 2/5. So I want to try and get the same number so that I can subtract the 2. So if I double the 1, I'm going to double the 2, which then I have 4. 4 and 5 aren't going to give me the same thing. So I'm going to double again, 4 and 8. Okay, and I'll double again, which will give me 8 and 16. Okay, so I'm moving along. I'm going to try moving along on the bottom here. So I'm going to double this one, 4 and 10. If I double again, I will get 8 and 20. And as you can see, my numbers aren't matching the same. But what can I do with my ratio table? How can I manipulate these numbers so that I could have the same number at the bottom? Well, I have a 10 here. I know that none of these numbers equal 5, but I do have a 10. So if I go ahead and use this, and now I have 2 and an 8, and I know that 2 plus 8 is 10. So if I use these two, then I can say 1 plus 4 is 5, and 2 plus 8 is 10. So now I know that I have 5/10 minus 4/10, which gives me 1/10. Okay, so that was just another way to find the common denominator. So I went ahead and doubled. I could have also easily just multiplied this by 5 to get 10. So 2 times 5 is 10, or I can just use it with doubling and then comparing numbers to try and find a 10. Let me show you another one just to see if it makes a little more sense. So the next one is 1/6 plus 1/2. Okay, and again, I'm going to make a ratio table just to kind of line up my fractions on each of them. 1/6 and 1/2. So here I have 1/6, and this one's smaller. What can I do? Should I double this? Well, let's go ahead and double it to make it bigger. I know if I double it on the bottom, I have to double it on the top. So I would have 2/4. Well, now I know that 2 and 4 make 6, so I'm going to add these together, and I would get 6, which then I have to add the top together, and I would get 3. So now I have 1/6 plus 3/6, and I can use these because they have the same number at the bottom, the same common denominator. 1/6 plus 3/6 equals 4/6. Okay. I can also reduce this, and I could also call it 2/3 because I can cut them in half. If I cut the 4 in half, I get 2, and if I cut the 6 in half, I get 3, to equal my final answer of 2/3 is simplified. This one is the correct answer as well. This is just a simpler version. They're both equivalent fractions, so either one is correct. My next one, I have 2 and 1/6 plus 3 and 1/10. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave them like this, but I am going to break apart. I'm going to write my 2 right here and 1/6, and I'll write my 3 right here with my 1/10, because I know this is my whole number, but I have to change up my fractions. So I could keep doubling this and see what happens if I can try and get them to have matching common denominators. Or I could say, what does 6 and 10 have in common? Well, what numbers will they both go into? Well, they won't both go into 10 because 6 plus 6 is 12. And if I go to 20, well, 10 goes into 20, but 6 doesn't go into 20. 6 times 4 is 24. So that won't work either. So I could keep building on this ratio table and build it out and build it out. Or I can just say, well, I know that 6 goes into 60, and I know that 10 goes into 60. So I can multiply this by 10 and get 60. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So now I have 10 60ths, and if I multiply this by 6, then I have 6 60ths. So now my numbers on the bottom are the same. That was a quick shortcut way instead of keep building on my ratio table by looking to see what multiples, okay, will go in. So I now have 2 and 10 60ths plus 3 and 6 60ths. Well, my 2 and my 3 together equal 5. So I know I already have 5. I use those. And now I have 10 60ths plus 6 60ths. Well, 10 plus 6 is 16 over 60. So I have 5 and 16 60ths. And I can also reduce that. If I want to cut it in half, I can't cut my 5 in half because that's my whole number. But my equivalent fraction, if I want to cut this in half, I would have 8. And if I cut the 60 in half, what's half of 60? 30. So I have 5 and 8 30ths. My next problem is 1/3 plus 1/20. Again, I'm going to make my little ratio tables. So I have 1/3 and 1/20. And I'm just going to kind of play with the numbers. You can multiply them if you find a common number that they both go into. Or you can mess with the numbers until you get to where you want them to be. So I'm just going to kind of play with this one. So I'm going to say 2 6 because I'm going to times it by 2. And I'll double it again. And if I double my 2 again, I get 4. And if I double this again, I get 12. So if I double it again, I'm going to get 8 and 24. Double it again, I'm going to get 16 and 48. So I'm just going to keep on going, okay? Or I can start playing with some of the numbers. So let's see, if I add 12 and 48, I would get what? 12 plus 48 is 60, and 4 and 16 is 20. Ooh, now I have 20 60ths. Well, I have a 20 over here, but it's not in the right spot. The 20 is on the top, so I need to get my 60 on the bottom. So how do I get from 20 to 60? Well, if I double this, I'd get 40. Ooh, now I know that 20 plus 40 is 60. So if I add these two together, I would get 60, and on the top I would get 3. So now I have 20 60ths plus 3 60ths, which equals 23 60ths for my final answer. Okay, I'm going to write a couple of problems on the next sheet here, and I want you to go ahead and try using the ratio table method to solve these problems. So my next one is 2/3 minus 1/4, and I have 1/5 plus 7/10. And my last one for you to solve is 1 2/10 minus 3/10. That one's a little bit of a challenge one, so I want you to go ahead and challenge your brain on this one. I'm going to put a star by it. It's our challenge problem for the problem string. Okay, so go ahead and turn off the film and go ahead and solve these problems, and we'll review them together in class.